Welcome to the first Hobby with Ollie video for 2025. For my first miniature of the year, I'm painting up the Sanguinor from Games Workshop. This iconic model embodies the angelic wrath of the Blood Angels, and I'll be walking you through every step to bring this celestial saviour to life with paint. This is going to be an intermediate tutorial as this has a load of interesting details, including shiny golden armour, parchment with high gothic script, a glowing power sword, and this flask of blood that is definitely 100% Imperium sanctioned, no chaotic influence here. We've got loads more to get through, but if you do enjoy this, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to the channel. For those of you already subscribed, it really helps with the YouTube algorithm and getting my content seen by more people, so thanks very much. I'll be breaking each step down into what I'd recommend for a beginner painter, and then if you're looking to push yourself, what you can do to give yourself a bit more of a challenge. Let's start with the shiny golden armour. Let's start with the big one. If you're painting the Sanguinor, you're going to need a good recipe for golden armour. I started this model from a black prime, and then for my first undercoat I used Rhinox hide. This warm brown tone will give us a really nice basis for our shadows. I found I got a really cool effect from this, meaning we won't need to use any shades to get our gold effect. Instead, over the Rhinox hide we'll be applying Retributor armour. This is applied all over the armour panels. Be careful here, as we want to leave the Rhinox hide behind in between the panels. If you do make any mistakes, just grab your Rhinox hide. Thin it down a little so it runs into the recesses and do a bit of a cleanup. Now, if you're a beginner, feel free to stop here. But for an extra level of detail, apply Liberator Gold as a first highlight. Focus this around the top corners and edges of your panels. As a final highlight, apply Stormhost Silver at the brightest spots on the corners of the panels. This is how all the armour is painted across the model. One note on the face. It can be quite tricky to get into all the tiny areas, so make use of the side of your brush to just catch the most prominent areas. By volume, the next largest area of this model is the wings. Start with a base coat of medium sea grey from Vallejo. Metallica's standard grey is a pretty good fit if you prefer Citadel paints. If you're following along, also make sure you get all the smaller areas around the model, including on the belt buckle, the shoulder pads, and on the back of his jump pack, as these are all painted in exactly the same way. The next layer is Vallejo White Grey. Here you want a cold grey that is close to white. This is carefully applied to the feathers. The process for this is actually very similar to the gold. Avoid the recesses, and if you make a mistake, come back in with medium sea grey. To push it further, add a layer of white. Add this around the edges of each feather. Now, I'm a huge fan of Blood Angels models, so let me know in the comments what's your favourite Blood Angels model you would love to paint. Okay, wings and armour done, let's do a quick detail, the webbing between joins like the ankles, elbows and waist. Base coat this black, just to give a nice separation. And to push it further, aim to highlight the individual ribs with medium sea grey, and then with a dot of white grey in the middle of each highlighted section. With that done, let's do the last big section of the model, the parchment that holds him up in his glorious ascended position. Don't forget there's also a smaller purity seal attached to his thigh and the parchment on his other shoulder pad. Start with a base coat of Vallejo Dark Sand. Now this does require thinning down and then the application of a few coats to get even coverage. Just be patient and use a hairdryer to speed up the process by drying the paint between layers. Making sure the dark sand is dry, I next apply a layer of thinned down Seraphim Sepia wash, about 2:1 paint to water. To push it further, I started by applying dark sand back to the edges of the parchment. I thinned it a bit more than usual, and then applied random scratches of the colour to the edges of the parchment, helping to add to the rough texture. With the parchment base coated, let's add some text. I mixed black and Rhinox hide 50-50, before thinning down a little more than usual. You need the paint to really flow off the brush. To the parchment, apply random squiggles to indicate text, and if you're feeling brave, add a few larger letters to the left-hand edge, like paragraph headings in old religious texts. To add to this, I also applied some transfers. Cut out the ones you want, wet them, and then apply to the desired area. You will see when you first add them that they tend to be quite glossy, which you can improve with a matte varnish, and then the application of thin paint to the edges to blend it in with the rest of the parchment. Don't be afraid to mix up the colours too. I used some corn red for some of my paragraph heading letters, as well as additional markings. Just have some fun with it. Okay, some more small details to tackle, starting with the shoulder pads. Base coat these with corn red, and for beginners, feel free to leave these here. To push it a bit further, apply Mephiston Red, leaving the Khorne Red just towards the outer edges of the panel. Next, add Evil Sunz Scarlet in a thin line around the top curve of the shoulder pad. Finally, Wild Rider Red is applied in the same way, but in a more focused line. Onto the metal parts, the chalice, the sword hilt, and the iron halo. Apply Vallejo gunmetal to all the metal parts, making sure it's dry. Next, wash over all of these with thinned down black paint. If you've got Nuln Oil, this is also a great paint to use. Now, there's loads of blood gems across the model. On the sword, the forearms and legs, on the shoulder pad, belt buckle, and also on his jump pack. We're going to be base coating all of these with Khorne Red. Use the side of the brush where you can to avoid hitting the other parts of the model. To push it a bit further, apply Mephiston Red in an L shape, just leaving the Khorne Red in the top right corner of each gem. Next, add Evil Sunz Scarlet in the same way, covering over a bit less and remaining inside the Mephiston Red area. Finally, Wild Rider Red is applied in the same way, but even more sparingly. To finish the effect, add a dot of white to the top right-hand corner of the gem, and once fully dried, apply a coat of gloss varnish. We've got one last small detail before the big finishes, so let's paint the handle of the sword. Start by applying Naggaroth Night all over the handle. To push it further, add Xerius Purple over all the panels of the hilt, just leaving Naggaroth Night in the recesses. Next is Demonette Hide for an edge highlight. Apply this to the edge of each panel, as well as in a line down the centre to indicate a little bit of a shine. Alright, we've got some big ticket items to finish up with. For the chalice in his right hand, we want to push the metals a bit, so apply a layer of Vallejo Steel as a highlight. To go even further, we can use Vallejo Silver to brighten up the rim of the cup. Paint the gems as described earlier, and then let's make some viscous, slightly heretical liquid to go in the cup. Starting with Khorne Red, apply this to the inside of the cup. Don't worry about being too neat here. After all, it's likely been sloshing around in the heat of battle. Highlight over almost all the liquid with Mephiston Red, just leaving Khorne Red in the deepest recesses. Next, add Evil Sunz Scarlet to the tips of the ripples inside the cup. Then, Wild Rider Red serves to push the highest ripples one step lighter. Imagine the little drops at the very top, and those top couple of ripples. To make this element stand out from the rest of our model, we're going to apply a layer of Blood for the Blood God over everything. Make sure it isn't too thick, as it will just obliterate your highlights we've worked so hard to build up. Now we've got a viscous looking shiny fluid that really reads as the blood from our chalice. For the eyes, I kept it fairly simple. Add white into the eye sockets, be careful not to have too much paint on your brush to avoid it spilling out. Once this is fully dried, take your blue paint of choice. I'm using Vallejo Medium Blue, and thin it down with water to a wash consistency. Wipe any excess off your brush and add it into the eye sockets, trying to leave a white dot in the centre. Don't worry, you can always re-add a dot of white at the end if you need. Now, one of the best parts of this model was the glowing power sword. Now, this is a bit more of an advanced set of techniques, so if you're a beginner, feel free to paint the sword just like the other metals that we've seen in this tutorial. However, if you're fancying a bit of a challenge, follow along to see how I got this effect. Also note, you will have to do this on both sides of the sword. Start by applying Vallejo Medium Blue over the whole of the sword. Once this is dry, come in with a much lighter blue. I'm using Vallejo Sky Blue, and apply it in roughly equal sized sections as shown. I first mark out where I want each of my sections before filling it in. Next, we're going to apply a glaze. Thin down your medium blue until it's about half as thin as a wash paint. It really should be much thinner than you're used to if you haven't tried this before. We're using this paint to gently tint the lighter blue at the edges of our sword sections. Remove most of the watery paint from your brush using a cloth or paper towel, and then pull the glaze from the light section towards the dark section of your sword. Be patient, this takes a few passes. Make sure your paint is fully dry in between layers, and this is one of the techniques where a hairdryer is really going to speed up the process. Eventually, you'll start to see the light blue sections are darkening towards the edges in a pleasing gradient. How many glazes you do is up to you, but I think I did about 5 or 6 on this power sword. To finish off, apply an edge highlight of white around the edge of the blade with the side of your brush. You can do the same thing with a line down the middle of the blade, but be really gentle with your brush and keep it sideways to avoid getting white paint on your hard work. For added flair, you can use this same white paint to add some noise with thin lines near the edges. Use your brush upright and slightly thinner paint than usual to help get nice thin lines. Okay, so I've done power swords before, but now it's time for something new even for me. The flask on his hip, and we want to make it look like there's liquid inside. This is going to be a more advanced technique, so if you're a beginner, just apply corn red over the bottle, maybe wash it down with some black wash. For those of you looking for a challenge, let's crack on. I start by basing the whole bottle with rhinox hide. Now I'm going to add a light neutral grey that I made by mixing white grey and sky blue in roughly equal parts. The grey is helping to desaturate the blue so it looks more like a reflection in the glass. I apply this mix to the top half of the bottle. Next I take pure white and apply this as a dividing line between the grey half and what will become the liquid half. Over the liquid half I glaze corn red, pulling from top to bottom so the colour is more concentrated at the bottom of the flask. I repeat this same process, first with Mephiston red, and then with Evil Sun scarlet. I next apply a dark grey glaze over the shadowed parts of the top of the bottle. In a moment, the top is going to be made shiny, so the bottom should be in shadow to give a bit more contrast. Using pure white, I add the shine by drawing a straight line between my two elements, showing the reflection of light off the outside of the bottle. With a bit of cleanup, we have the completed effect. And with that, we've completed this Avenging Angel. Thanks so much for watching. I make videos like this every single week, so be sure to click the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified the next time a video of mine goes live. If you want to support the channel directly, there's a couple of ways that you can do so. Firstly, there are my affiliate links to Element Games in the description down below. Element Games provides hobby supplies at a discount price compared with buying from Games Workshop directly, so if you go to those links, you're going to get discounted hobby products, and I get a small kickback at no additional cost to you. If that's not direct enough for you, I've just started a Buy Me a Coffee, so if you'd like to give money directly to the channel, that's the easiest way to do it. You'll find the link in the description below, buymeacoffee.com/HobbyWithOli. It's always very much appreciated, and currently every single penny that I make on Hobby with Ollie is going straight back into the channel, so thank you for your support. Anyway, Happy New Year, and I hope you get loads of minis painted in 2025. And in the meantime, my name has been Ollie, this has been my hobby, and I'll see you next time.